Following 5.0, there are obviously many questions one could ask about the story. This video was originally going to be the 4th installment in the 5 biggest unsolved mysteries in Genshin lore. While I was reviewing the questions one may have, there's one topic that seemed to stand out amongst the rest, and it's this. Who is the Lord of the Nights? Because the clues laid out thus far regarding their true identity are leading us down a horrifying path. And before any of you fucking comedians make the joke, no, it's not me, nigga. I can already hear the keyboards. Oh, I'm gonna be the first one. You're black, get it? Yeah, I'm black. I get it. You got me. We know very little about this Lord of the Nights. All we really know is that his or her kingdom is the Night Kingdom, and that they were allegedly born long before even the first Pyro Archon, xbalanque. The Night Kingdom is where they are said to have ruled, hence the name the Kingdom of the Lord of the Nights. But whether they still rule is unknown, although it's implied they no longer rule. So far as I can tell, information regarding the Lord of the Night is few and far between, but they have been referenced spottingly throughout Natlan, and going off Knich's burst voice line, are well liked in Natlan given his voice line quite simply states, for the Lord of the Nights. Furthermore, and perhaps the most important piece of information regarding the Lord of the Nights, they are a god, called the God of the Night in CN. Most of the information in-game about the Lord of the Night comes from a book series called Records of Hanan Pacha. This series is about Waxel-Uba-Khan, better known by his title, Sage of the Missing Flame. It's simply meant to document his story from stealing phlogiston from the dragons and giving it to humanity before sort of just piecing out, realizing he fucked up. And to the book's credit, it does do that, but here's the odd thing. The book comes with this description, quote, a fable passed down from generation to generation in which the legendary Sage of the Stolen Flame is the main protagonist. Professional historians, it is said, have analyzed its contents and have come to a consensus that this tale has nothing to do with historical facts. This warning, we'll call it, should be noted, but I'll talk more about it later. The book starts out by giving us a time and a place. Quote, like many of the most ancient stories, it begins in the age when the stars and the moons held the sky, the dragons ruled the land, and the Lord of the Nights ruled the Night's realm. The people then were ignorant and wandered the barren lands. The first Pyro Archon had not yet been born, and so none yet had visions, could do naught but be controlled by the elements. Now with that said, the warning from earlier does come into play, given the very next line of the story says, quote, now astute listeners might already be wondering, as a human, how could the sage Waxel-Uba-Khan steal the phlogiston kindling from the claws of the evil dragons? Now, this is wrong, because in reality, Waxel-Uba-Khan was himself a dragon. The story goes on to speak of a descendant of Xiacoatl, whose hubris offended the Lord of the Night, and so the Lord sent Waxel-Uba-Khan to deal with him. Quote, perhaps it was the vanity of the winged dragon that offended the Lord of the Night, for he sent the sage Waxel-Uba-Khan to defeat him, but perhaps that seemed not enough to some, and so the gods sent the fool Chak with him. Under the protection of the Lord of the Night, the two arrived in the red and black lands, and far away, they saw that radiant winged dragon. The two eventually defeated the dragon, claimed its treasure, and then thought about offering it to the Lord of the Night. Quote, the fool Chak thought they could offer the treasure to the Lord of the Night, but the wise Ubal-Waxa-Khan had a different idea. The idea was obviously him granting humanity phlogiston, which allowed them to prosper, but something odd would happen. Quote, after the people were taught how to use the power of phlogiston, they built a city on top of Hanan Pacha. Within the city were magnificent palaces and temples, all made of rare gems, brilliant feathers, and fragrant flowers. After completing all of this, Waxel-Uba-Khan decided to raise Hanan Pacha still higher. For this, all of you must no longer eat anything produced by this land save for water, for all the streams of this world flow from the source of all waters, and are not subject to the Lord of the Night's control. For some reason, Waxel-Uba-Khan was trying to get humanity away from the Lord of the Night by raising the city higher and higher, to which the latter would soon take note. Quote, finally, the Lord of the Night realized the sage's intention. As they feared humanity's departure, they decided to try and stop his plans. What happens next is then very revealing. Quote, one day while the sage was away, the Lord of the Night disguised himself as a human of the tribe, and carrying a bottle of mysterious water, he found Cha'ak waiting by the lake. Friend, don't guard the water of this lake any longer. See? The water I hold is 100 times sweeter than that of the lake. Come, have a taste. Though he thought of what the sage had said, it was just water, so it should be fine, or so Cha'ak thought, reaching out and taking a sip. Trying it, he discovered the taste was truly sweet beyond compare, and so the Lord of the Nights gave him more sweet water, and he brought it up to Hanan Pacha, sharing it with all. But what Cha'ak did not know was that this sweet water was actually brewed from the grains grown from the land. In our modern parlance, it was alcohol. When the sage returned, everyone was dead drunk. The sage knew that they could no longer leave Natlan, and so he expelled them from Hanan Pacha. The scattered people brought phlogiston with them to every corner of Natlan, and that's how the story ends. It's never revealed why Waxel Uba Khan attempted to break the people free from the control of the Lord of the Nights, but maybe his actions would make a lot more sense if we first learn who the Lord of the Nights really was. Firstly, it's important to keep in mind this Lord of the Nights was, as earlier stated, a god. The term in CN, there's no, basis for me to sit here and even try and better translates to night god or god of the nights. Now, this is interesting because remember, this story takes place before visions were a thing, which means it was at the very least before the end of the Archon War. However, thanks to the artifact set Obsidian Codex, we know Waxel Uba Khan's story takes place shortly after the war with the Second Who Came, which is around the time gods started popping up all over Teyvat. However, given the reputation the Lord of the Nights had, hell, it was the Lord of the Nights who had Waxel Uba Khan and Cha'ak kill the scion of Sheikah. It sounds as if this god had been around a while and was well known, but if that's the case, then who is it? Who is the Lord of the Nights? God of the Night. In this context, Night should be referring to the Night's Kingdom, the place where the people in Natlan go when they die, and home of the Wayebs. In this sense, it's the underworld. Mayan mythology has its own underworld called Xibalaba, where the Wayebs also reside, and its primary ruler is Han-Ahu, ruler of Xibalaba and God of Death. This God of Death was the most feared of all the gods of death, hence its name, God A. Han-Ahau goes by many names. One of them is Achu, translating to melt, because when a soul would enter Xibalaba, Han-Ahau would burn the soul using fire. What's even more is that Hun-Ahu was not only the god of death, but also regeneration. Now, if only there was an ancient god in Teyvat, I'm talking one of the oldest in existence, who is a god of death, has powers relating to that of fire, and is associated with regeneration. My friends, there very well could be, and it could be, the Shade of Death. If the Lord of the Nights really is the Shade of Death, a member of the Heavenly Principles, then it would suddenly make sense why Waxel Uba Khan attempted to break the people free from the Lord of the Nights. Waxel Uba Khan wanted the best for both dragons and humanity. It wanted them to live in unison. However, if it felt like the Heavenly Principles were holding humanity back, a not too unpopular sentiment among the higher beings, a lot seemed to think the Heavenly Principles hold humanity back or shackle them. In that sense, it makes sense why he wanted to break humanity free from the Lord of the Nights, or the Heavenly Principles. And while he very well could have been the first person to attempt such a stunt, he certainly wouldn't be the last.
Eternity extends time into infinity. Dreams illuminate each moment within. When both shine in unison, the sacred Sakura blooms from the darkness, finally free from the clutches of the Heavenly Principles.
Now for those going, but the Shade of Death, that should be the God of Death, not the God of Night that we're talking about. Yeah, keep in mind, Istaroth was called the God of Moments, in addition to being the God of Time. The only thing I can't really wrap my head around in, with this entire situation is that in Mayan mythology, Han-Ahu would be killed by xbalanque, whereas in Teyvat, the one whose powers xbalanque borrowed were thought to be the Shade of Death, who was called Renova. So, how can we reconcile this? this wasn't me, by the way, getting ready to do. No, I'm genuinely asking. How do we?